Hello! Welcome back. I was gonna record earlier and upload earlier our our podcast this week, but I didn't. I went and I got myself some frozen yogurt instead before they closed, which was a half hour ago. But here I am. And I promise this episode will be the full hour this week, giving you the full podcast experience for week 13. Wow. Week 13. I think out of the year we missed like 2 or 3 weeks possibly. I can't remember when we started, if it was the first week of January or what, but not entirely sure. All I know is it's week 13 today. Madeline 13 as well. It's weird how numbers align like that. I don't think that's something that many people notice, but like I can get fixated on those things. Like, oh, look at these numerical relations. Even though like there's not really any meaning to those things, like deeper than on a symbolic level, it still is like interesting to me to look at. Just probably because of that, just play with symbolic elements. It's intriguing. It's fun to do. It's fun to play with signifiers, I guess. But speaking of that, that might go deeper into what I want to cover this podcast. But let me get the cord of the mic out from under everything. Here, gosh. Because there's probably a multitude of political philosophical themes that I could cover tonight. Because of course I'm always thinking. There's always thought occurring. I'm always in a fluid, liquid movement of thought. Unless my brain is completely out of commission and I have like one of those headache moments and it's just like I just can't function. But if I'm functional, there's always a train of thought moving, multiple trains of thought, multiple flows of desire flowing, moving down the multi-leveled river streams. They're all intricated within each other, if you will. So many different directions, so many different places to touch upon here. But possibly we should start. Where should we start? I don't really have like I had this big Twitter argument and some famous person's reply list, or like, I'm super angry about this specific thing to like get into in the beginning this week, but I rewatched the Infrared Destiny conversation, the second time they talked, when it was like cleaner and like more calm and good faith, and Haas was not standing up in his like alpha male posturing and like yelling at Destiny and stuff. It was actually an interesting discussion to listen to, and I feel like that would go for like anyone regardless of your political opinions, because they started it with like philosophical mining, basically like mining into philosophical content. And one thing that they touched on there was they were talking about like it was kind of a derivative of when Haas debated Vosh, and he kept asking him, like, what defines words. I think that was it, unless it was, like, a Vosh fan, possibly. But, like, what gives something its definition? And that's an interesting topic to focus on, I think, because I think the answer is a little bit more complicated than we're trained to sort of think of things as. Like, I'm so sick of all of the labeling and stuff, but the specific example that Destiny and Infrared discussed was they were talking about water, and Destiny said, like, yeah, socialism and capitalism are like human concepts, so like without humanity those would just cease to exist. But water is like a exterior substance, so like without humanity there would still be water. But my complicating factor here, which is like a little bit different from what Haas said, but maybe it's like similar to what he was trying to get at, is that actually if humanity disappeared, there wouldn't be quote unquote water, because our concept of what water means and the actual thing itself in the world are two different things. So you actually need humanity to exist in order to have all of our definitions and interpretations of reality. And that gets at like a more fundamental point of my perspective philosophically on things that I regrettably can't articulate in full detail here right now. But once it's like fully crystallized and I can like write it out, I think I kind of want to do an episode of just like deconstructing things like that and really going through my philosophical frameworks and methodologies and perspective on the world, because like it has and honestly, for as much as I sort of despise most like interpretations of psychoanalysis and everything, I think this is a good insight to draw out of Lacan, because he draws out the distinction of the word we use to describe a thing and the thing itself, which is sometimes described as like a division between being and meaning. And the way that Lacan describes it is basically like, as an object enters the symbolic order to gain its subjectivation, its subjectivity, you sacrifice some of your being for meaning. And so there is a gap, that is a perfect word to describe it, between the meanings we give things and the things themselves. And that is a fundamental detail. That's a fundamental feature of the world in order to understand it. I think that is a very crucial point to get at. The fact that you can't reduce the substance of a thing to the word and the meaning that we symbolically give it as a culture at any given moment. And that gets at my problem with the broader way that honestly literally in my school, in my class, they were teaching Lacan, because he was basically teaching it as like the symbolic order is just reality. Like that's like he was conflating the symbolic and the ontological, basically. Like Lacan's symbolic is the quote unquote real world, when that is like such a conflation, and it misses the fact that Lacan also has a concept literally called the real, and it's not that. Like it's like it's called the symbolic for a fucking reason. Like it's not the real world. You can't just simp into society like that and just be like, yeah, whatever society says, that's just truth. Like that's not the point. Like literally that is not the point. But yeah, it makes me so angry. And, like, there's a lot of reasons why it makes me mad. But specifically, it's like, I'm in school with all of these kids. And I picture it as, like, they're going to be out there in the real world in, like, administrative, like, professional managerial positions, running systems of power. Like, literally intricated as managers within societal structures. So I don't want these people who think like this to be doing that, because then nothing's going to change. It's just, society is just going to reproduce itself. And I feel like if you have a more critical engagement with psychoanalytic theory and things like that, you realize that there's actually a point of intervention where you can change things like that more drastically than just having all of the correct woke opinions about fucking race and gender issues and shit. Like seriously, like there is a point of intervention you can access where you can say, no, I don't want to just inherit the symbolic order, completely allow myself to be entirely inculcated and subjectivated into it as it is in our contingent historical moment, because he doesn't even get to the fact that even these structures in these structuralist theories are, in a broader sense, contingent products of a world historical material reality that is constantly in a state of flux and change. None of it is set in stone at all. It's all contingent. They don't even get into that radical historicism. It literally isn't covered at all. It's literally not covered anywhere in the whole fucking theory class. It's literally, like, they literally don't even touch on that. They don't even show you that there's broader, different concepts of these psychoanalytic things, like Deleuze and Guattari's concept of desire, for example. I had to bring that up because they don't teach it in the fucking class. It's crazy. And then I'll get told in another class, like, oh, these political biases, like, oh, you're not presenting the opposite side. It's like, yeah, neither does the curriculum. Like, when are people going to realize the fact that just because an opinion or a perspective was handed down to you and molded by an institution, that doesn't make it true. that doesn't automatically give it truth value. That doesn't make it real. That doesn't mean you have to agree with it. And the fact that, like, there's no such thing as so-called unbiased information. And if you actually engage with any kind of theory beyond, like, typical Anglo-box nonsense, like, if you actually engage with Gramsci, for example, you get that fundamental insight of the fact that, oh, the opinions that are commonly held in a culture are held together by a structural hegemony between fucking societal structures of power. And there's no objective ideology. It's literally a product of power. Like, it's so frustrating because you hear these people always love to virtue signal to reality, quote unquote reality, as if we all just have this, like they appeal to the unconscious understanding of what that word is supposed to mean in our culture, of course, but, like, everyone also has a more conscious subjective opinion of what that means. Like, there is no concrete, objective, purely scientifically, empirically provable reality across all dimensions of fucking, like, theology, like, religion, religious opinion, political opinion, fucking culture. Different cultures have different interpretations of reality itself. Economic structures and things like that. You can have different viewpoints on them. Like, there is no single truth. That's just not a thing, and it really honestly never was a thing. Even when everybody was inculcated in the same sovereign society dominant order where you have to listen to what the king tells you or else he'll cut your head off, and fucking everyone believes that God is literally controlling everything like a fucking puppet. Even back then, that wasn't the objective truth. It literally wasn't. Like, You have to understand that there's no such thing as a single truth. There's no such thing as an objective perspective on reality. It's all subjected to interpretations that are mediated by structures of fucking power. So you can't just appeal to reality as if we all know what that is and share this common view of what that means. Because all you're doing when you do that is appealing to the power structures that already exist and are subjectivating people as they already have been. That's literally all you're doing. But when you appeal to fucking quote unquote reality like that, you're appealing to the meanings and interpretations of things as they've already been subjectively formed. That's not the same thing as objective reality. And so, like, I've honestly gotten, like, slightly off track. Like, I'm just following wherever the thought pattern is leading me. But it's like, these things make me so frustrated. They literally make me so frustrated. Because there's a deeper level of theoretical engagement that you have to get into. And that's more interesting to talk about than just striving, like, with this weak neoliberal nostalgia for some era where we all were just told the same shit, so we all believed the same shit, and it was known as quote-unquote objective, unbiased politics. There's never been such thing as fucking unbiased politics. That's the point of politics. It's a power struggle. That's what real politics is. Seriously. And it's funny because you can get that insight if you just read about Lacan. Like you literally can learn this if you read that in an honest critical engagement. The symbolic order is not the objective reality of the world. It's the subjectivation of people into the fucking socio-historically contingent cultural context that they're in. That's what it is. It's not real. As opposed to the imaginary realm. Like seriously, it's so frustrating that throughout all of these classes, he didn't explain that to us once. When that's really what it is. That's really what the theory says. But it's just... I hope you can see my frustration, and I hope I'm not, like, totally not making sense. But yeah, the definition that we culturally, symbolically give to a thing isn't what the thing is in reality. That's my point. There's a separation, there's a gap between them, always. And that's part of what I was talking about with, I don't know their name. The guest 2 weeks ago, as far as the inherent flaws in communication and language. That's literally part of why that is because is like the whole reason why we can have different meanings of the same word is because there's a difference between the word and the thing we're describing. That's the whole, like, literally that's the whole reason. That is one of the most fundamentally important insights as far as psychoanalysis goes for literary theory. It really is. Just that simple fact. But it's like, it's not even explained to us that way in school. And it's so frustrating. It's like, why? Why? But that brings me, honestly, into a broader, more fundamental critique of the structure of education as it exists in a capitalist society. Because really the reason why it is because ultimately we're not engaging with ideas and trying to gather knowledge for knowledge's sake. It's not an institution of learning for the sake of creating educated subjects. It's an institution of creating people who are designed to work jobs after you get out of it. That's literally that's literally the whole point of the fucking education system, especially in fucking America. It's literally that. Turn you into a worker drone. And if you get to go to college, you get a salary instead of a wage. Wow. Damn. And then you get to feel like you're better than all of the dirty fucking Republican voters who are less educated than you. It's like, it's so disgusting how that cultural divide gets formed. Like, we need to think more critically about that and not just write these people off as like, oh, you're too far gone, you're unsavable. All because their symbolic order that they're inculcated in, their subjectivity is full of a bunch of bigotries because they haven't been educated out of them. That's literally the whole thing. And the reason why is because of economic fucking reasons. Like, but we're not supposed to take economics seriously. We're not even supposed to engage with it on a deep level. We're literally just supposed to take culture war sides on pathetic, pointless issues. Politics is supposed to be a flat game in our sort of postmodern era. It's literally supposed to be like, oh, what debate streamer do you watch? Oh, you watch Destiny? Oh, that's so cringe, dude. I watch Vosh. I'm better than you. It's like, that's literally what politics has been reduced to. Is a bunch of fucking gamers bickering at each other over whether or not it's morally correct to say a slur in private or something. Some stupid bullshit like that. Like, that's literally what politics has been reduced to in our era. That should depress the fuck out of you. That should be a depressing thing to realize. It really should. Like, you really have to come to these hard recognitions and look at it in a real way with a historical context. But again, even that, like, there's so many intellectual, ideological mechanisms that are preventing us from seeing past our symbolic realm and into the like, it's literally, there's kind of a Lacanian interplay that's happening where we're constantly trying to avoid the real. We're constantly trying to avoid reality with all of our symbols. Like, that's literally in a macrocosmic way. That's literally what's happening in our broader cultural context entirely. Like as a sheet enveloping everything. There's that ignorance, that self-deceptive ignorance of like, oh, I watch Black Panther. That makes me like some kind of fucking anti-racist activist and shit. Like all these symbolic identities that are formed, like consumer identities that are formed that give people some kind of sense of political catharsis for their powerlessness and moral authority over people that they then view as less than them. And that's part of why I detest moralism. Is because it's what politics has been reduced to. Politics has been reduced to individual morality, which doesn't change anything because none of us are in the position of institutional structural power to enact those moral positions. And a fucking moral position in an abstract floating sense doesn't mean anything unless you're in the position of power to enact it. It literally doesn't mean anything beyond, oh, these people will talk to me and these people won't. It doesn't mean anything beyond a social fucking thing. Politics has been reduced to social media, and that's one of the biggest problems of our era, I think. Because it feeds into the powerlessness of the minoritized subjects that I talk about. It literally does. It amplifies that. It creates the enclosure space for that to be able to exist. And so you have to think critically about all these factors that are contributing to the state we're in if you actually want to change it. And that's the whole point of being a fucking Marxist. If you want to call yourself a Marxist. Like, that's literally the point. That's literally one of Marx's personal philosophical theoretical theses, is that we're not just here to interpret the world, we're supposed to be trying to fucking change it. So you have to realize why none of us are in the position of power to change anything. And part of it is literally a lot to do with the cultural environment that we're in. It's kind of that simple. Like you can question, like, oh, why is Maddie constantly talking about these things? Like, what doesn't she think that like this is more? But it's like, because this is what I think is fucking important, and because I don't hear it discussed enough, especially not by Vosh or any of those people. I don't even hear it discussed in an academic environment that I'm inculcated in every day. I don't. Instead, I have to deal with some dumb people with their stupid, simpy societal perspectives on things, and the way that these theories are being taught completely missing the key insights that are actually useful academically and intellectually to understand the moment we're in and to understand literature itself, which is what I thought the whole point of the class was. Like, things are just really disappointing to me because I actually work really hard on the rare occasion when I do my work. I actually put like my whole attention into it. My whole effort into it. So it sucks when I'm let down by my environment like that. And when it's like, oh my god, like I put so much effort into like whatever part of my own subjectivation, like forming myself that I can do myself, I take advantage of because I literally don't allow myself to be formed into the type of subject that these institutions of power want me to be formed into. I reject it. I have my own value system even. Like literally, like the ideology, if you want to use that word, that I'm coming at things from is distinct and different from the ideology that is hegemonically enforced through the institutions that I interact with. It is a different one. It's a different way of looking at the world. And I say all that to say that like the dissonance between us creates a sense of emotional disappointment and depression for me when I'm in those states of interaction with it. Because it's like, if I was just in some kind of institution where they approached things in this critical way, this critical historical way that I try to look at things through, and like not trying to say that society as we know it is good and based and like capitalism is good and based and we just need to change a couple of things and social progress is inevitable because I buy into this bullshit conception of history. Like like if I was in an institution where that wasn't the fucking perspective that they were coming at it from and they were meeting me where I'm at, I would be so much happier as a person. I really would be. But that's not the situation I'm in. It really isn't. And I don't know how I'm going to clip this episode, I'm thinking, because like I'm going like all the places that I wanted to go. Like rapid fire. Like I'm just like... So I don't know, but I wonder what anyone else would think about this. Like, feel free to like comment on anything I'm saying if you happen to listen to this, because like I when I engage with people on the level that I'm on, it's incredibly exciting. It's just really exciting to me. Like it makes me feel so much better, just purely on an emotional level even. Like just to talk to somebody who's not just a fucking liberal, just for a couple of hours, even just texting them is like, it's such a fucking breath of fresh air to me. It literally is. Because I'm surrounded by this bullshit. I'm surrounded by it. It's everywhere. They batter it into my fucking skull. They literally try. I literally feel the pull of my teachers to like become more liberal and like more capitalist and shit. And like less of an outlier, like ideological outsider, like true to some form of Marxist lens of analysis of things. And it's just so cringe to me because it's like I have to resist that pull at the same time as I'm trying to learn something. Like, you know what I like? that's just another reason why it makes me question, like, why the fuck am I even here then? Like, it's just so frustrating. And I can't tell if anyone else deals with this at the same time. Because, like, the people that I do have access to talking to, I don't think that they have the mental energy to focus on this as much as I do. You know what I mean? Like, tragically, for me, it doesn't seem like it seems like other people get really easily exhausted by this shit. Like, just really easily, like, exasperated by this stuff. But honestly, it feeds my life. It gives me fuel to fucking fill my life with. Like, if I didn't have this level, like, I'm that type of person where I crave intellectual material. I literally need to be learning things and, like, broadening my mind and, like, expanding my mental horizons, or else there's an emotional pay. Like I will pay emotionally if I don't engage with philosophy and stuff. Like, it's just one of those things that, like, feeds my life. So, like, I don't get tired of this stuff. I really don't. Like, I could do it and I kind of do it obsessively. Like I kind of have that tendency of, like, obsessively, like, engaging in things, like, repetitively over and over again, daily, like that. But everybody does that on some level, to some extent, with different things. Like, and that's, like, that might lead us into another topic that we can fill, like, the next however long of the podcast with. Because I'm so sick of diagnostic thinking. And it feeds right back into the label thing. Like, the word we use to describe a thing is not the thing that gives it its meaning. Like, and I think there's some generational factor involved here, where it's like, my generation is just so obsessed with labels. So obsessed with labeling ourselves. And in, like, a Deleuzian sense, we're so obsessed with allowing ourselves to be territorialized. We're so obsessed with it. We're like, oh, I have a little bit of trauma from my relationship. That must mean that I have PTSD now. I have this natural anxious reaction to these crazy expectations and constant bombardment of information from my school. That must mean that I have an anxiety disorder, and it's my fault. It's my problem. It's like, no, dude, that's such a mistake. That's literally such a mistake. You're fucking yourself even more if you think that way, because it's like, it's not because of your brain. It's not because of your fucking brain. It's because of your fucking life conditions. Like seriously, it's not something wrong with you that causes you to have a distressful experience of the world. It's something wrong with the fucking world. Like why is it so hard to think that way for us? Like, why can't we break out of this individualistic diagnostic framework of constantly diagnosing each other and ourselves with things, and constantly forcing everything into these supposedly clean-cut categories that we constantly just expand, and that really, if we looked at them honestly, outside of all socio-historical contingent context, in an objective, really what fucking objectivity means in reality, we would see that all of these categories and all of the requirements to enter them are fucking arbitrary, because they're artificially drawn by society itself. Why is it so hard to reach that realization for people? Why? Why is it so difficult? Like, I'm just so sick of the fact that it seems like the symbolic order and, like, the subjectivation that occurs in our world today, in our moment today, turns all of us into mental slaves. It literally does. It turns all of us into fucking mental slaves. Literally to ourselves. We become our own warden, as Foucault said. Like, we literally, like, nobody is killing the cops in their head no matter how many times they put ACAB in their fucking bio. No one is doing that. We're constantly policing ourselves. We're constantly forcing ourselves into mental social prisons. We're constantly doing that. All the time. And I'm sick of it. Like, you need to realize that if you even want to conceive of what true liberation would mean socially, you have to break out of all the territories first. You have to reach that point. You almost have to make yourself a body without organs in a Deleuzian sense in order to conceive of what a different world would even look like. Like, seriously. And I don't know if this all sounds like quote unquote esoteric mumbo jumbo to you people, but like, it's just my honest thoughts. It's just my honest look at the way that things are in my own life, in the life of everyone around me that I'm seeing. Like, I'm just calling what I'm seeing in the terms that I use. Like, and I'm not good at putting it in layman's terms, I don't think. But maybe I'm wrong and someone will, like, boost my ego by telling me differently. But, like, I don't want it to sound like I think that I'm this godly fucking brain galaxy genius, because I don't think of myself that way. I'm just a crazy theory nut. Like, that's literally it. Like, I'm literally just knee deep in this shit. Like, that's literally the case. It's literally just the fact that I'm analyzing things through a different lens. I'm interpreting things in a different way. It's not because I'm smarter than you. I'm just good at this. Like, honestly, I don't like when people feel like they're dumber than me. I really don't like it. That's not my goal at all. My goal is not to sound smart at all. And honestly, if you really know me and if you really listen to what I say, that should be obvious. Because why would I be trying to appeal to some constructed idea of what it means to be smart in the first place? I don't give a fuck about that. I don't fucking care. Are you kidding me? Why the fuck would I care about that? Like, honestly, what I'm seeing more and more in this hellish fucking college institution is the fact that what smart means is if you learn the analytical skills and if you agree with the hegemonic ideology. That's how you get smart. That's the equation of how they will call you smart, to be honest. And I just don't like it. I just have so many complaints. I want to do like a whole episode, a whole stream even on like college ideology and all of the bullshit. All of the bullshit that just gets forced into people's throats. It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. Like, here's the thing. I don't want people to like. I don't really care if people think I'm stupid, because honestly, that's probably just a sign that they're stupid to me, in my opinion. But I don't want people to think that I'm not serious. That is one thing that I have, like, an actual, like, problem with. Like, I don't want people to think that I'm just, like, a pseudo. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm just, like a pseudo-intellectual, and I'm, like, I'm not seriously engaged with it. Because if you just listened to the last fucking almost 40 minutes of me talking, I feel like it comes across that I take this shit seriously. Like, I wouldn't be sitting here in my dorm room fucking ranting at my computer screen if I didn't take this shit seriously. I wouldn't even be doing this. You know what I mean? I have work I could be doing, but I take this more seriously than that. Just to be honest, just to be blunt about that. I don't know if I'm being too aggressive. I don't know if I'm setting the vibe in a toxic way. I don't know, but we hit the 40-minute mark. Damn. Usually this is around where we end lately. I'm so sick of having those 40-minute podcast episodes. It's so lame. You guys deserve at least an hour. At least. At the very fucking least, 60 minutes. You know? And I'm kind of covering what I wanted to get into as well. It's kind of I'm accomplishing that, but I'm getting so passionate and heated and like following the flow of thought that it's like I'm not being as eloquent as I want to be honest. Like there's such a balance of forces like that occurs here. Like it's hard to achieve that. It's hard to achieve that kind of balance of like, because when you hear somebody talking in an intellectual way and they say a bunch of huge words, like a huge string of words in a way that is eloquent and it flows well and you can tell that they know what they're talking about when they do it, it's really fucking impressive. Like when somebody is in the zone and they are going off, as they say, and they're just unleashing these takes, and you can tell it's like, wow, like they know what the fuck they're talking. That's a very impressive thing for me, at least, to witness. Like a lot of Zizek talks have those moments where it's like, damn, like okay, dude, like it you can feel in your mind as you listen to it, you can literally feel your mind like moving and like changing as he's talking. And it's like, right. I think I get what you're saying. But this is really fucking impressive just on like a more visceral physical level that you're able to just like say that. Like, you know, like I want to have those kind of moments, but I almost feel like I would socially need to have it written prior in order to do. I don't know. Maybe I've done it before for you on your like level of engagement. I don't know. It's just like one thing that I wanted to note. It's a very impressive thing. But yeah, like I hope I'm doing something that is different. And I kind of know I am. Like very few people will get on their quote unquote stream or like podcast or something and just say this shit. I feel. And this is especially like this is a different type of content than you'll get if you watch a BreadTube streamer. You see what I mean? Like, what I was doing when I started... Well, what I was doing when I started this YouTube channel was something else entirely. But then, like, when I started streaming on Twitch as well, it was inspired by, like, Vosh and all those people. But now, what I'm doing is, like, trying to go against the Voshite grain and create something else that's more in line with theory tube, however that would be defined, with like Acid Horizon and all those podcasts. Even though what they do is different from what I'm doing here with my guests and stuff, because what they do is they have a group and they read a text and then they do an episode on the text, whereas what we do here is more free-flowing theory conversation. So the combination of those elements, the free-flowing element and the theoretical, like deep book, like academic sort of kind of feeling, is really interesting because I think I've achieved it in an interesting way. I don't think that this podcast is like any other podcast, is my point. In some ways, I don't like that. In some ways, I think it's worse because there could be more of a consistent flow from episode to episode, I think. I think that's one thing we can work on. I do indeed think that. But let me have another drink of water here. Yeah. I don't know how I'm gonna clip this one though, because as far as consistency goes, like I'm just going all over the place here. I kind of wish I had a guest. Like sometimes when I whip these things out, I wish I had a guest here, just to hear someone else's response directly, like immediate feedback. Be very interesting, I think, especially depending on who it is. But anyway, like anyone in the Discord, except maybe the reactionaries, because they would probably want to argue and stuff. Like, I still kind of want to have Illuminati on the podcast at some point, but I don't know, like, I'm not entirely sure how it will happen. Maybe I should just stream and debate him. That's one thing. Maybe we'll just do that. He's kind of a Nick Land-esque figure in the server at this point. So that would be an interesting discussion, because obviously there's different interpretations of, like, everything in that sense. Neo-reactionaries. It's really cringe, to be honest. They don't have a great grasp on most issues. Like, Nick Land is just like a angry Twitter boomer at this point. Just whining about SJWs and shit. SJWs. Oh shit. Here come the stews. They're coming for our fucking penises. They're coming to take your dick. They're coming to emasculate you. There's some neo-reaction. There's some xenofeminism. Gender accelerationism. Turn everybody into women. That's pretty cringe ideology too. I don't understand why people take that seriously. Like, it just feeds into the idea that there's like an inherent feminine like ideal that exists, and like it feeds into the cringy feminist perspectives on gender of like men and masculinity is like inherently bad as well, but it turns it into like masculinity is inherently inferior. It's almost like gender accelerationism is like if female domination porn was a political ideology. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things like that, actually. Why do people get their politics from porn? Like, just keep it in the porn. Like, you don't have to turn it into this cringe essentialist, like, serious political dogma. Like, literally just get off to it and end it there. It ends there. Don't allow it to fucking consume your brain and shit. I wish that were easier, but apparently it isn't. Apparently that's not the case. There's nothing worse than arguing with radfams on Twitter. Nothing worse than that. Oh, I have no gender, yet I'm a woman. It's like, okay, dude. Alright. A little bit too dumb for my tastes, but yeah. Woman is a gender. You can't... you can't be anti-gender and pro-agender. Like they can. It's just that conflation with gender and sexuality, and then they call themselves radicals. They call themselves radicals when they literally commit one of the most common conflations of concepts that is enforced by society as it is, which is the conflation of gender and sex. So it's like, how the fuck are you a radical if everyone agrees with that? Just in their like own ignorant assumption of the world. That's not fucking radical. What? Are you kidding me? Like, it's just so sad. Like, I'm so glad I'm not cringe like that. Like, if you ever want to feel good about yourself, this is literally what I do. Like, if you ever feel embarrassed of yourself, just think like, at least I'm not an old boomer Republican politician who's like actively fucking up the world for other people. You know? Think that way. Like, at least I'm not fucking Newt Gingrich. At least I'm not fucking Louis Gomer, bro. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you have to think that way. At least I'm not fucking Steve King. You know what I mean? Not the author, obviously. The fucking senator. If he's still in office. I don't know. At least I'm not fucking Mitch McConnell. That's how you have to think. It's a really easy skill to learn, I think. Especially if you watch, like, typical left-wing media. It's really easy to get mad at those people. So, just remind yourself, at least I'm not Mitch McConnell. Makes you feel better. It really does. It really works. Because what could be more embarrassing than being some old man fuck who literally just sits around and makes shit worse all day? What could be worse than being that disgusting level of human being? You know? Nothing. Not much. But yeah, in the last sort of quarter of the show, we're kind of getting a little bit more like toned down intellectually on that level and kind of just like joking around, which is fine. It was kind of like a 45-minute rant about all the shit on, or my voice, holy fuck, all the shit on that like academic level that has been pissing me the fuck off recently. And now we're just fucking around, which is cool. But if I have to say it again, I'll just say it again. The point, basically the whole running theme of this episode, there's a couple. This is sort of the conclusion I'll give at the end. The word is not the thing. The symbolic meaning we give to something is not, that does not define its essence, is not the same thing as its being. Which includes a diagnosis that's handed down to you by a societal institution of power, is not the same thing as the experience you go through that they're labeling. It's not the same thing. And let's go even deeper than that. What that means is, it has a couple of implications, right? Firstly, they could turn literally anything into a diagnosis. They could if they wanted to. They could say that, like I saw something that was like obsessive love disorder. What the fuck is that? obsessive love disorder. They're pathologizing love here. You know what I mean? Pathologizing fucking actually genuinely giving a shit about another human being. You know what I mean? So they could create diagnoses for any fucking behavioral mental pattern if they wanted. But it also means that they're all kind of bullshit. You know, like you could infinitely produce them, and you could infinitely reject them as well. And then the other sort of like concluding main key theme running through the entire episode here, I think, is that politics has been reduced to a flat, frictionless, video game style sort of virtual reality world where none of us actually have any power to change anything, but we're all berating each other and building all these dogmatic groupuscules to fucking throw shit at each other from the tower walls of over what politics has been reduced to, which is this individual moralization of every single little fucking issue. And the consequences that this has are politically nothing. Nothing changes politically from this kind of level of debate bro engagement in politics, quote unquote politics. It's actually just culture. But also it produces this phenomenon where a debate bro dude who's just like, I mean, if you want to institutionalize it, he has a music degree and he's famous for playing StarCraft and League of Legends on the fucking internet. It suddenly turns him into this moral authority in the eyes of a bunch of fellow dude bro gamer bullshitters, who then are elevated into this sort of symbolic virtual position of power where they're able to say a bunch of stupid shit about trans people and like a group that he's not even really a part of, except he is non-binary, but like he's not he doesn't present in a way that is different from his assigned gender at birth's associated cultural presentation. Like, he's assigned male at birth, presenting as what we view as a man, yet somehow he's supposed to have the authority to say shit like, oh, if you present femininely but you have a penis, for example, and the person doesn't find out until you have sex, that's tantamount to rape. He's able to say stupid, honestly implicitly bigoted opinions like that literally just reinforce the status quo, and we're all supposed to think that that's like he's like this somehow a legitimized authority on these issues simply because he has a large audience of dipshits who fucking think with his mind and don't engage with knowledge on any level deeper than watching fucking 3-hour debate streams where people talk about, should I be allowed to say the N-word in private or not, and a bunch of stupid fucking meaningless garbage like that. Like, seriously. Oh my god. So yeah, those are our key themes. Those are the takeaways that I want you to get out of this fucking episode. We live in a shopping mall prison where everybody is fucking constantly policing themselves and others. No matter what your supposed political beliefs are, everyone is doing this. Unless you sort of unplug from it. But even that is difficult. Because here I am talking about it. So I'm involved as well. I'm implicated into the structure. It's kind of how it works. So I hope that's not too depressing. But yeah. The point, in a more broad sense, is basically this shit needs to fucking change, alright? Just take that with you. And yeah, hopefully next week we'll have guests. I want to do a guest next week again. But until then, goodbye.